Raymond, lots of rankings and bold predictions on today's episode. The Bleacher Report listed some bold predictions about the MLB and what's going to happen in the NL West. And this reminded me about their other article that came out a week ago about their bold predictions for the second half of the podcast season. And the boldest one, the hottest take they gave, Ray, is they said the GoldCast would not remain the number one podcast in the game heading into the second half of the podcast season. Raymond, what were your thoughts? What is your reaction to them saying we can't make it to the championships in the podcast season of 2021?
My reaction is bullshit. This is sensationalism at its finest. I think this guy has it out for us. It's no coincidence that he was also a former co-host of the Who Dat Cast. And I think, when you fail at something else, you try to succeed by disparaging somebody else. I mean, that's just the type of guy that this writer is. And I can't stand him. We've had a couple of conversations to try to put water under the bridge. It didn't go well. And, this guy's just a failure. He's a failure. He's a failure at podcast hosting, and he's a failure at writing, and the statistics speak for themselves. We're number one right now, and I don't see anything that's going to derail us from being number one in the second half of the season and getting into the tournament.
I completely agree. And Raymond, I don't want to go too deep into that conversation, but by putting water under the bridge, Raymond actually took a glass of water and pushed it into his face. And we learned the hard way that really doesn't make friends. That's not a way. You can't put water under the bridge by throwing it in someone's face.
I wanted to make a literal illustration of us moving past it, and it didn't go well.
This is the GoldCast.
Boom! Welcome to another edition of the GoldCast. We are the voice of the Bay. I'm your host, Rudy III, and with me is my brother, my co-host,
Raymond Solis the first, baby.
Boom! Raymond, lots to talk about today, and we are opening with, for the first time in several episodes, the San Francisco 49ers. It's been a while, and unfortunately, we are starting on a more somber note. We are going to open up with Richard Sherman. We're not going to really get into what has occurred. We're not going to hypothesize about what has occurred or what we think may have happened or, what the logistics of all the reports are coming out. The main thing that we wanted to say here on the GoldCast is that we're glad that he has been released from jail, and we are really glad that he is hopefully getting the attention that he deserves, the help that he needs. Richard Sherman has been instrumental for the 49ers in the rebuild. He was a great rival when he played against us. And I think I speak for a lot of 49er faithful when we say we just hope that Richard Sherman gets some help and that he's okay and that this all ends up, just being a bump in the road. Raymond, what are your thoughts on Richard Sherman?
Well, there's not too much I can say that you haven't already said. I mean, he's been a consummate pro on the field and off the field with all of his community work, and he's just been a standout guy. He was even a 2015, I think, nominee of the Walter Payton Award. So I hope that this indeed is just a speed bump and just some kind of bump, and that he does get help, and that, assuming that that's correct, and that he's all right. Because I would still like to, the NFL needs him in some form of capacity. And I hope that that he's able to get past this, if it indeed is, what is reported. But I hope that he's all right. I'm glad he walked, away from jail, and there wasn't any significant, damage done to him or anyone else. So hopefully he gets past this and we can move on.
I agree. I think he still has a lot to give to football, and I think that I think I speak for all of us when I say that we all want to see what's left, because I think there's a lot left in the tank, both on the field as a player and possibly as a coach in the future. I think he'd make a killer defensive coordinator. All right, Ray, but let's move on. Let's move on to some more positive news. There.
Oh,
did we? We have the same background.
We have the same background.
Well, there it is. We're sticking with it. We're going with it. ESPN's Jeremy Fowler provided some results. He took a poll polling who the top 10 tight ends in the league are. And I'm going to just go over. we're not going to show you everybody. We're going to go over the top 10, but we're only going to talk about the top 2. George Kittle was ranked number 1 for the 49ers, Travis Kelce for the Chiefs, Darren Waller for the Raiders, Mark Andrews for the Ravens, TJ Hawkinson for the Lions, Dallas Goedert for the Eagles, Hunter Henry for the Patriots, Evan Ingram for the Giants, Jonnu Smith for the Patriots, Zach Ertz for the Eagles. But we're only going to focus today on those top 2. Because I had a feeling, and I think everyone assumes, these are the 2 best tight ends in the league. And, of course, this is the GoldCast, so we're going to focus on our boy, George Kittle. So he said, an AFC scout said about Kittle, he moves after the catch better than anyone, and he's the toughest on the list, the best blocker, and he could catch 100 passes in the right offense. Then an NFC executive said, I'd still take Kelce over Kittle because there's nobody better at getting open and making tough catches look easy. So, Raymond, now I bring the question to the greatest fanalist in the game. Now, Ray, the question is Kittle over Kelce, or do you think Kelce is over Kittle? Did this poll get it right? I'm asking a very biased San Francisco 49ers homer, but I'm asking for your honest opinion.
This is objective, by the way. I think Kittle is the better tight end because Kittle can do everything that is, required of the tight end position. And if there's one thing that's a little lacking in Kelce's game, it is the blocking aspect of his position. Kittle is an outstanding blocker, arguably the best blocking tight end in all of football. Kelce, not so much. Kelce's skill set leans more on the offensive side of his position, meaning catching touchdowns, moving the chains, possession receiver. He does that. Executive is right. He does make tough catches, but Kittle makes some really crazy tough catches too. There's a big one-handed catch for a 50-yard touchdown that he made just a couple years ago, including, setting the tight end record for yardage, which Kittle then broke the very next year. So, but when Kittle's healthy and that offense is clicking, he is, to me, he's just one tier above Kelce. It's the disparity between the two is not great, but at the same time, Kittle gets the obvious edge to me in every single aspect. And the main impetus for that is the fact that he is the total package tight end, whereas Kelce is almost the total package.
Yes, we are in agreement. Kittle is the total package. Although maybe if you're going fantasy, maybe you go Kelce first. He gets more yards fantasy.
yeah. I mean, if Kittle's healthy, then yes, I think he's definitely a great. If whoever gets him in fantasy, I think Kittle should be taken first in terms of fantasy draft, but there is no better number 2 tight end to select from that list than George Kittle.
Oh, so you're saying Kelce first, Kittle second in fantasy.
I think if we're talking fantasy draft, you should definitely draft Travis Kelce. I had him last year. He was amazing. Our father had him the previous 3 years straight or 2 years straight, something like that. So he's extremely productive. He's been healthy. He's healthier than Kittle's been in his career. So I will give him that edge as well. And as far as that relates to fantasy, that's what you want. So, I think Kelce's number 1, Kittle number 2.
I love it. All right, Raymond, back to our typical middle report right now. And that's, of course, the Warriors trade watch. Bum. I feel like there should be some big music right there. Dun. Warriors trade watch on the GoldCast. Raymond, the Warriors trade watch. It's very interesting. They're saying right now, this is being reported that Plan A for the Warriors is to trade their lottery picks for a starter who is in their prime, with a possible, once again, Wiggins being linked to this. And the main reason for this, because we here at the GoldCast are adamantly against a Wiggins leaving. We think Wiggins is a wonderful fourth piece to the puzzle. But the main problem is that he's scheduled to make between $31.6 million next year and $33.6 million the following season. So over $60 million. And this is a team that already has a pretty bloated salary as it is. But according to that, that's why they're saying that this possibly...
and they have a Steph Curry signing coming up.
And they have a Steph Curry re-signing coming up. So they're saying that possibly he could be included in the package to make room for the new salary that they're going to have to take on, whoever it be. Rudy hopes it's a Damian Lillard, but who knows? And then
I give up a Wiggins for a Lillard.
I think you have to do that.
It's fair. It's fair.
It's fair. It feels fair. The person they asked about this, though, and he had some interesting things to say about it, was the Warriors' Vice President of Basketball Operations, Kirk Lacob. And he was on another podcast earlier this week, and he said that he is super happy here. The coaching staff loves him. The players love him. He's talking about Wiggins, of course. He was great. We traded for him for a reason. He's here, and we love what he's about. I understand why people throw his name into things. He's the new guy, and he wasn't part of the championship core. We're always honest with guys, too. Have talked to Andrew's agent many, many times over the year, and he will call and say, hey, I'm hearing this. And I'm always to Andrew, look, you should feel very comfortable here. You're very well liked. I'm going to tell you that I'm not. Am I going to tell you that you will never get traded at any point? No, I would never tell anybody that. We tell everyone that. We never want to lie to someone. Now, that doesn't mean that is what they want to hear, but we don't want to lie to a player or agent because that looks bad if something happens or if there is a remote chance. So, Raymond, now with all this information coming out, how strong do you feel is it the possibility that Wiggins most likely will be part of a trade package if one occurs in the next 30 days?
To me, it depends on who the Warriors are targeting. If they're targeting a superstar, then I think Wiggins is in that package. If they're targeting someone who's more of a role player, someone who can add depth to the bench but is a quality starter, much like Wiggins, then I think you can get away with that via, someone who is on, someone that they'd rather trade Oubre before Wiggins, even though Oubre was productive. It took him a while to get going, but I think they'd giving up picks in addition to our rising star center Wiseman. That kind of package with an Oubre, I think, would also get a quality starter on par with Wiggins or even slightly better. I think that could work too, while keeping Wiggins, because you're getting future assets as well as a very high potential asset as well, in addition to Oubre, who's an already productive player, who's also young and, has a little bit more ceiling in him. So I think that is a possible trade package. But again, if it is a superstar, then unfortunately Wiggins has to be a part of that. And I guess I'm okay with that as long as, the star fits, the Warrior scheme. To me, Wiggins fit like a glove. So I think, to me, he's the perfect piece to complement Klay as he acclimates back from 2 devastating injuries.
Well, and that's the question. What kind of Klay are we going to get? Again, as I've said many times ad nauseum on the show, I said it just several days ago, I do not believe that Klay alone makes this team a championship contender. Does it mean that we're feisty? Does it mean we could be competing for 3rd or 4th in the West? Absolutely. But are we number 1? Are we sitting there top dog with a straight shot to the finals again? I don't think so. But as we already saw this year, it was a pretty funky season, and we'll see what next season brings. Anything can happen in the playoffs, and sometimes it does, and this season has definitely been big proof of that. So we'll see. And I as we just said, if it's someone like Damian Lillard, who Rudy wants on the Warriors team, then yes, we have to say goodbye to Wiggins. You have to. You make that trade 10 out of 10 times, every time, if you're the Golden State Warriors. But outside of that, I agree. It's a wait and see. All right, Raymond, moving on. Our San Francisco Giants, Bleacher Report released their list of bold predictions for the second half of the season. And here were the 2 that were in regards to the NL West, in regards to our San Francisco Giants. The first one, Padres end up winning the NL West. And it says here, Joel Ruder.
I like
Bleacher
jokes.
Report. Yeah. He says, does this qualify as a bold prediction? ? The Padres are 3rd in the NL West standings, but they also have the 3rd highest run differential and the 4th best record in the National League. As long as Yu Darvish does not miss significant time with the hip inflammation that landed him on the injured list before the break, they should be right in the thick of it of the division race. That was number 1. The second bold prediction, the Giants, just like the Phillies, under Gabe Kapler, collapsed in the second half, setting up a fight with the Reds for the second wild card spot in September. Joel Ruder defended our team here. He said, Kapler has something to prove, and the manager will likely take the brunt of the blame if this team does crumble down the stretch. However, pitching has been the key to San Francisco's success, and not one of its key arms is pitching over his head to the point that serious regression appears likely. The Giants are for real, though they could still wind up with the second wild card spot. So the question is, Raymond, can the Giants hold on to first place in the NL West and stave off a Dodgers who are surging and staying strong, and a Padres who've just been badass all year? Can we keep this spot, or can we keep this Cinderella story going?
I think so. The Giants are for real. Even though we had the episode where we last spoke about the Giants and we were talking about them limping into the All-Star, they actually finished strong into the All-Star. They obviously heard the cast and said, we're not going to take that. And then they went out and they swept.
They swept the Nationals, got it done.
Yeah, and they got to face the Nationals again starting tomorrow. So looking forward to that game. And one thing he said there that stood out to me, the Giants are for real. That is a true statement. I believe that. I think everyone has seen that. It's been consistent enough to believe it. They've been arguably the best. They've been either first or second best through this first half almost the entire time. And the other thing I'll add to what he said is key arms. Yes, pitching has been the key to San Francisco's success. And that is ultimately what wins you a trophy at the end of this tournament. However, the Giants have been the complete team, in my opinion. They've had star pitching, including, they have at least record-wise 3 aces on the mound right now, in addition to the contributors like Cueto, who I don't really see as an ace anymore, although he's every now and then he taps into it as long as his health doesn't, keep him back. And then we have the young guy Long in there as well. But the offense, which had a little bit of a sluggish start to the season, picked up and has been very consistent for the most part. They've run into a couple of brick walls, mainly the Dodgers. But outside of that, they've been extremely productive and very consistent for the most part. And they've gotten production out of their veteran players in addition to their young players. And that's while being one of the most injured teams in baseball. So they're tough to beat because they have depth. They have people that can move around and play majority of positions if somebody goes down. And players have the bat to keep up the pace offensively if they do lose a bat or two down the stretch. And we know Longo's going to come back sooner or later, and Belt's making his way back, and he'll be back as well. So some guys are going to come back. And if other guys go down, we have the depth to cover them. So I'm not worried about that. The Giants are the total package. I do not believe that this is a hot take. This is more, he's got to put a few of these in here if he's covering the entire league, right? Because that's part of writing, unfortunately. But in the world of sports, I accept sensationalism a lot more than I do in other, news mediums or news topics. But as far as the Giants are concerned, I completely disagree with this. The Giants, to me, will win the West and will not be biting for a wild card position. To me, that just seems like nonsense. If we were talking the 2010 team as well as the 2014 team, the Giants, only the 12 team was to me the most dominant team of the 3 championship teams. Outside of that, they were kind of, a little up and down during the regular season. In 2010, they barely got in. They had to fight for a wild card position.
They won the NL West on the final day of the season.
Exactly, yeah. So it came down to the very end. This team, no. I don't think that the Dodgers will be able to keep pace because their championship run last year was predicated on a season that catered to what their stamina is capable of. I think my hot take is I think the Dodgers will run out of steam. I think the Padres will catch them and they will fight us for first place, but ultimately we will get past the Padres as we have a few times this year. So to me, the Dodgers are the one that actually succumbed to this prediction, not the Giants.
Well, here's where I stand with everything. This is where I'm at with this. I'm at the wait and see mark because I was very disappointed with that 2-game sweep that we had again to the Dodgers. The Dodgers swept us in those 2 games. It was a short series, but that was to me a prove it series. It was the end of our mini gauntlet, and I really thought you want to at least split the series, sweep the Dodgers minimum, but not get swept. So I really need to see how the Giants play for the rest of the season against the Dodgers. The Dodgers, for me, are the litmus test. They have been the dominating force in the NL West, one of the best teams in baseball for almost a decade. they have dominated. So if the Giants want to prove that they're for real this season, it's going to come down to them beating the Dodgers and at least splitting the season with these guys. We don't have to beat them, but we don't have to beat them every time. But if they win 2, we have to win 2. And I don't care if we go 500 down the whole stretch. That is what it's going to take. But if we go under 500 to the Dodgers, I don't see them holding on to first place because it's just so tight right now between both these teams.
It is very tight, and I'll give them credit for that. They've kept pace in a division where if you go into a losing streak, you'll fall behind pretty significantly. That 4-game stretch did not do any wonders for them, but they were able to surge back and keep pace. But as it stands right now, the San Francisco Giants are the best team in baseball.
No question there. All right, so what say you, GoldCast Empire? Who's the best tight end in the league? Is it our boy George Kittle? Or is it their boy, Travis Kelce? Let us know in the comments. Go to youtube.com/thegoldcast and let us know. And then secondly, will the Giants stay number 1 in the MLB? In the NL West. They don't have to stay number 1 in the MLB, but will they stay number 1 in the NL West? Let us know. youtube.com/thegoldcast. And don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, and hit the notification bell. And so concludes another edition of the GoldCast. We are the voice of the Bay. I'm your host, Rudy Solis III, and with me is my brother, my co-host,
Raymond Solis the First, baby.
Boom! We'll see you next time. Same GoldCast time, same GoldCast channel.